myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Good afternoon, welcome to NUFC Matters. It's the Eddie Howe press conference review. Arsenal away tomorrow, of course, the 3rd of January 2023, 7:45 kickoff. Newcastle United's press conference is always available on their official YouTube channel. And today, for some reason, it was a lot shorter. So I get the impression that the guys turned up late and didn't get everything that was needed. So the press conference was only 13 minutes long, usually about half an hour, as you will know. Andy Sixsmith was the first person covered on today's video, though, and essentially was just asking about, this game that we're going to play and a little bit about Arsenal. And Eddie Howe was also, basically asked, what can we learn from this game? 12 months on, I guess, from a one, well, not even 12 months on, coming on from that game that we last played Arsenal, where we took them on at St James's Park. So Eddie said, we'll learn a lot. It'll be a high-level game. Arteta's done a great job, and it's a journey of improvement since May for Newcastle and for Arsenal. But he says they've really showed some really good consistency, and they've been very impressive to play some really good free-flowing football. And they've improved, we've improved, and it's a game he's looking forward to. First versus third, Andy Sixsmith said. He says, are the players excited that this is happening at the top of the table? And he says, look, of course, the players are going to relish it. And it's a sign of how far they've come in a short space of time. Andy also said, if somebody said to you 12 months ago that you would be fighting it out at the top of the table for a Champions League place as opposed to fighting it at the bottom for a relegation spot, what would you have said? And he paused for a bit and then essentially said, look, I'm trying to think of something funny, but I just can't. In essence, he just said, look, we're there on credit. Miles Starford from the Shields Gazette was next, concentrating on Joe Willock, who, of course, is going back to his parent club. He waxed lyrical a little bit about Joe, just said that he was pleased with, how he was maturing as a player, that he's got raw ability. He's got a good eye for goal, and that he's done very, very well for him as a coach. And also, as Eddie often does, doesn't want to heap too much praise. Did say there was a lot more to come. Said he's got an eye for goal as well. Asked if it was a difficult decision by Miles for not starting Callum Wilson and playing Chris Wood instead. He said no, because Callum had only trained a couple of times, so it wasn't a hard decision at all. He was also asked by Miles whether Newcastle and Arsenal were the surprise teams this season, and he went, well, I don't think anybody will be surprised by Arsenal, he said, because ultimately, Arsenal were, a good team last season, and from our point of view, he said, we're a work in progress. We're not where Arsenal are at the moment. We are moving towards that level, and we are a work in progress. So, good answer again from Eddie Howe on a difficult question, I guess, from Miles. Jordan Cronin was next up from Newcastle World. Asked, with games so close, his rotation, something that he's looking at, and he said, look, we will pick a team that we think can do a job. Of course, rotation may well come into this, depending on how people, look in training today. It's as simple as that, really. No, no mystery to it. If players aren't fit enough, they're not going to start, are they? And if players are looking a bit jaded because of the World Cup or because of too many games too close together, that'll happen. He was also asked about Gareth Qual. Look, just saying that the player's development was key, that he needed to play at a good level and potentially with a good coach. Obviously the question was simply, is he going to go out on loan, to get that experience? No decision has been made yet, was as simple as that. Didn't quite hear who the next person was with the question. He was asked, I think it was by Kieran from the Chronicle, and asking what the hopes were for the next 12 months. And he just said, look, to keep the core of this team together, keep the same mentality, keep the same motivation, and commit to improving the core and keep the same kind of characteristics. Chris was next up. and just basically said, how important was that Arsenal game that we played last year where we came away with the result. And he said, look, he says it was very important last year, but that's in the past now. And I don't even think about that anymore. He just basically said that game was a glimpse for everybody about what we could be in the future, and was quick to emphasise that it had no relevance to this game whatsoever. Scott was next up. Again, don't know who this guy was. Might have been Scott Wilson from the Northern Echo, but that's just a guess. And just asking about the Arsenal game in particular, and how Newcastle would take to the field, and would they be looking to win this game as opposed to potentially what Leeds did, which was park the bus, trying to stop Newcastle scoring. And he just said, look, as a starting point, if you go in with a negative attitude, then and you go in believing you're not going to win, then that's obviously what is potentially going to happen. And he said we won't be going into this game thinking we can't win. We want to go into every game, thinking we can win, and that's the kind of mentality we're going to go in with. Next up was Martin. Presume it was Martin Hardy. Basically, just again, just talking about the actual collective, the team, the attitude within the squad, and Eddie Howe was just quick to reiterate what he said in previous press conferences, which is that the players think of the team rather than themselves as individuals, and they're constantly fighting for each other. Last season, they were fighting for each other for a different cause, which was to stay up and not get relegated. This year, they're fighting for something completely different, fighting to stay, in the European slots. Martin also mentioned that it had been said that he was somebody who had a great year last year, better than Pep. And he goes, that's nice to hear. He says, but he says, I'm on dangerous ground if I start listening to that. He says, because and start believing it, because ultimately, on the flip side, there is people who are very negative. And he said, then I would have to start listening to that. And he says that isn't conducive to what, the way I do things. So ultimately, from his perspective, said, it is nice to hear those kind of things, but he doesn't listen to either side, praise or criticism, because it would put him off doing his job, I guess. Reiterated again as well to Martin that he's got total faith in the players. He believes this squad and team that he selects can give anyone a game, and he says ultimately they believe in themselves. Craig Hope was next up, and again he wanted to go back to that Arsenal game that Eddie Howe had when he first took over the club. And again, one of the first times that he was in the dugout, and wasn't a very good day for Newcastle down at the Emirates. And he just said, look, that was the early signs of the group. He said we hadn't really time to bring our ideas. We're only getting to know people. He said, but he said the good thing about that was that although we came away from that game disappointed, he says the group itself didn't become fractious, and it helped us in essence, to reach our end goal, which of course last season was to keep the team in the Premier League and go on a decent run. Lee Ryder, as you often know, and you hear on this podcast that we do, was last. He actually had some good questions today. He basically said, you just looking at the squad you've got, looking at the way you're performing, since the restart, can I suggest that you might not be disappointed if you didn't sign anyone? And he didn't mince his words on this. He just again said what everyone's thinking. We've now Jonjo Shelvey's out. We now know that Matt Targett has got an injury and he could be out. We don't know how long for yet. We've got a long-term injury, of course, in Emil Kraft. So he said that any injury can highlight squad deficiencies and create a potential weakness within the squad. And that, John Joe's injury and Target's injury are causing concern. So, again, we go all around the houses in these press conferences, but he's not going to give anybody indications of where they're going to strengthen, who they're going to sign, are they close to anything? Is this happening? Is that happening? He just, he keeps his cards very close to his chest. But there is obviously, you can take what you want out of what he said there, but he's, the John Joe injury and the Target injury are causing concern, and potentially Newcastle might have to act. So we will wait and see. Lee finished it off with, just a quick word about characters. Anyone that they do sign, the character's got to be right. He said, look, of course, characters are hugely important. They've got to fit the squad, and, anyone who comes in can be, can work for the the cause, but, could also cause a bit of an upset in the dressing room. You just don't know. So, characters are hugely important, and it's something that Newcastle United's team will be looking at 100%. That's it then. As I say, quite a short press conference, only 13 minutes, and I genuinely think it was because they didn't get in time and they missed half of it, but there we go. Don't forget, if you're not a member, then you're missing out on an opportunity to win some tickets. Now, we do have the membership, which is the cult membership, which is a one-off payment, which we talk about every night on the show. But being a YouTube member by clicking the join button is very important. You can basically give us $1.99 a month. If you click join, you can have a look at the different packages. You can give us as much or as little as you want, but $1.99 a month this month will get you the opportunity to win 2 tickets to see Steve Howe in February. I will be announcing the winner of the first set of tickets tonight, but it's a members only video, which I will be doing later on. So join up, you've got time, and I'll be doing that sometime after 6 o'clock tonight, where I'll be announcing last night's winner and then asking another question for you to give you a chance of winning 2 tickets. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Political Bias. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody else in the chat. I will be back at 6:15 tonight with the Fans Forum. Take care. Bye-bye.